My name is Ron Henderson, 57 years old, and for 14 summers, I was the man who found the cottage on Lake Muskoka, signed the rental agreement with the agency in Gravenhurst, transferred the damage deposit from my own checking account every February, loaded my truck with enough groceries from the Barrie Costco to feed 12 people for a long weekend, and drove home on Monday night with a back seat full of wet towels and sand, while my daughter-in-law sent photos to her friends on Tuesday morning of the cottage weekend she organized every year. This past spring I stopped. I didn't book anything. I didn't call the agency. I didn't transfer a cent. And by 10 o'clock on Victoria Day Saturday morning, the morning 12 people were supposed to be pulling into a gravel driveway on a lake I'd been renting since 2010. My phone had rung 14 times, and I hadn't answered once. I didn't plan on what happened next, but none of it makes sense without the 14 years that came before it. So let me take you back. Before I do, take 30 seconds and hit like and subscribe. Drop me a comment and tell me where you're watching from, what time it is where you are. It helps more than you know. Now let me go back. My wife Joyce started the cottage tradition. That was her idea, her energy, her doing entirely. Every March, she'd get out a spiral notebook. She always had a spiral notebook in whatever drawer was closest. And she'd plan the Victoria Day long weekend, from the Thursday night drive up to the Monday supper. Who slept where, who brought what, whether the kayak place down the road, still rented by the day, or had gone to a weekly rate. She had a way of making a rented place on a gravel road feel like it had always belonged to us. Joyce passed 11 years ago. Ovarian cancer, 14 months from diagnosis to the end. My son was 24 at the time. He handled it the way he handles everything hard, quietly, jaw set, going to work, not falling apart where I could see him doing it. My daughter-in-law had only been with him a couple of years then. She came to the funeral with a casserole dish and a look on her face that said she was going to take very good care of him, and I was grateful for that. I still am. Keeping the cottage going was my idea. I thought if the family still came to the lake in May, there'd be something that felt like Joyce in the shape of it, even if she wasn't there. So the February after she passed, I called the same rental agency, and I booked the same property. Same deposit, same account, my name on the contract. I drove up alone that first Friday afternoon, and I sat on the dock for an hour before anyone else arrived, watching the ice on the far end of the lake finish breaking up. The family came. It was good, not easy. Nothing was easy that year, but good. What I didn't see coming was how, gradually, over years, the cottage stopped being something I'd kept alive and became something my daughter-in-law ran. It happened the way these things always happen, in pieces too small to object to. Year 3, she started sending out the reminder messages in the family group chat. Departure times, what lane to take off the 400, where to stop for Tim Hortons. Practical, helpful. Year 5, she took the meal requests and divided up the grocery list. Year 7, she arranged the kayak rental from the outfitter down the road. All reasonable, all useful. What shifted was the language around it. The way she talked about it to people outside the family. The cottage weekend she organized. The tradition she kept going for everyone. The property she'd found up on the lake. She said that last one at a neighbor's backyard gathering in the summer. Said she'd found it, just like that, to a woman I'd never met. And I was standing close enough to hear it, and far enough away that she'd forgotten I was there. I let it go. That's the honest answer, and I want to be honest with you throughout this, because the honest answer is the only one worth anything. I let it go every time, because smoothing it over felt simpler than starting something, because I told myself it didn't matter who got credit as long as the family came together. That logic cost me 11 years. Let me introduce the people around this, so you understand what I was working with. My son is 33. He works in project management for a commercial construction firm down in Toronto. He has his mother's patience and his own deep instinct to avoid direct conflict, which makes him very good at his job and sometimes hard to reach as a person. I say that without judgment. It's just accurate. My daughter-in-law is 31. She works in marketing for an agency in the city. She's sharp, she's organized, and she has an ability I've genuinely never seen matched in anyone else. She can reframe a situation so completely, so quickly, that by the time she finishes talking you find yourself uncertain about what actually happened. She is not a bad person. I want to be clear about that from the start. But she needs to be the one who did the thing, who built the thing, who found it, organized it, made it possible. My brother, 61, retired from CN Rail, lives up in Sudbury. He's the one person who watched all of this across 14 summers and called it by its right name, even when I didn't want to hear it. He's not a man who stirs things up for the sake of it. He just has no patience for performance, and at his age, neither do I anymore. The planning call for this past spring happened in March. My daughter-in-law organized it over a WhatsApp group she'd named May Too Far. She laid out the weekend on a voice note, who was arriving Thursday versus Friday, which route to take, whether it was worth booking the kayaks again or just renting paddleboards this year. Then she got to me. Dad, she'd called me Dad since the wedding. You don't need to worry about anything this year. We've got it all sorted. Just pack your bag and show up. I said okay. I didn't mention that I'd already wired the $4,200 rental deposit to Muskoka Lakeview Rentals 6 weeks earlier, in February, the same month I'd been doing it since 2010, because the agency held the long weekend dates from the previous year, and you had to confirm by March 1st or lose the property. She had it all sorted. The moment I actually knew, the moment something in me stopped bending, came on a Saturday afternoon in late April. My daughter-in-law had her book club over. I'd swung by to drop off a tray of butter tarts my sister-in-law had sent down from Sudbury, something I do every spring. I came around the side of the house toward the back gate the way I always do, because the front door was always locked and the back was always open. She was on the patio with 4 women I didn't know. Wine, a cheese board, late afternoon sun coming through the fence slats. She was talking about the cottage weekend. We've been going up for years, she was saying. I found this property on Lake Muskoka. 4 bedrooms, screened-in porch, dock with direct water access. We take the whole family up every Victoria Day. I basically run the whole operation. I stood at the gate with a foil tray of butter tarts in my hands. One of the women asked if it was a lot of work to coordinate. It's a lot, my daughter-in-law said, in a tone that was tired and proud at the same time. But someone has to. His dad comes along, which is fine. He's easy enough. Easy enough. I set the butter tarts on the porch rail and left without knocking. I don't think she saw me. I thought about Joyce and her spiral notebook the whole drive home. That night I sat at my kitchen table and I pulled up the email archive going back to 2010. I still had everyone. I'm a retired accountant. I don't delete things. 14 confirmation emails from Muskoka Lakeview Rentals. Every one of them addressed to Ronald Henderson. Everyone listing a Visa card ending in the same 4 digits. Deposit paid, balance paid. We look forward to seeing you, Mr. Henderson. I got out a legal pad. I'm not a man who needs a spreadsheet for something like this. I can run the numbers in my head, but I wanted to see it in my own handwriting. 14 rental fees. The groceries I'd hauled up each year. The propane I'd replaced twice when the tank ran out early. The kayak deposit one summer when my nephew put a gouge in a hull. The quart of firewood I bought from the guy off the highway every year, because the bin at the cottage was always empty when we arrived. The cases of beer, the bags of ice, the toilet paper and dish soap I picked up in Barrie, because the rental didn't stock any of it. I wrote it all down. The total sat there in the kitchen light, a number that looked, on paper, a lot like a paid-off car, like a couple of years of retirement savings, like 14 years of choosing someone else's comfort over my own financial margin, and calling it love. Then I asked myself the question that doesn't go in any column on a legal pad. In 14 summers at that lake, how many times did I feel like family up there and not just the person who made the weekend possible? I sat with that for a long time. I thought of twice, maybe 3 times, all of them in the early years before the shape of things had settled into something I'd stopped noticing. I closed the notebook. I want to be honest about how I handled what I did next, because this part matters. I didn't cancel anything out of anger. I didn't leave vendors in a difficult position. I didn't send a message to the family group chat explaining myself. I called Muskoka Lakeview Rentals on a Tuesday morning. A woman named Wendy answered. I'd spoken with Wendy every February for 9 years. Mr. Henderson, she said, are you calling about the May booking? I am, I said. Wendy, I need to release the reservation, and I want to explain why before I do. I told her the situation plainly. I was the account holder, and I'd always been the account holder, but the person who actually organized the weekend on the ground was my daughter-in-law. If she wanted to keep the same cottage for the same weekend, she was welcome to call and open an account in her own name and put a card on file. Wendy was quiet. I heard keys clicking. The deposit you've already paid would stay with the property. I know, I said. That's fine. I'm not asking for it back. And if your daughter-in-law calls to inquire, tell her exactly what you'd tell anyone starting fresh. There's no reservation under her name. If she wants the long weekend, she puts her own name on the contract and her own card on file. Wendy paused. 14 years is a long tenure with us, Mr. Henderson. It is, I said. That's part of why I'm done. When I hung up, my coffee had gone cold. I sat with it anyway. Something had shifted in the air of the room, the way it shifts when a window opens that's been stuck closed for a long time. My daughter-in-law called on a Thursday evening in late April. Warm, breezy, the way she opens every call. Dad, quick question. I'm updating the group chat. Did you confirm the Muskoka booking already? I didn't book this year, I said. A small laugh. Like I'd made a mistake she was kindly correcting. Sorry? I won't be handling the cottage booking this year. I've stepped back from that. A pause. What does step back mean exactly? It means whoever wants to go up needs to make their own arrangements. If you want the same property, call Muskoka Lakeview and set it up in your name. Same place, same weekend. They'll have availability if you call soon. The line went quiet long enough that I checked to see if the call had dropped. Dad. Her voice had changed register, flatter. We have 12 people planning on this. My sister's flying in from Calgary. You can't just, this isn't the time to be making some kind of point. I'm not making a point, I said. I'm just done being the one who books it. We always assumed you. I know, I said. That's the thing. I told her good night and I meant it kindly. Then I set the phone on the counter and watched it light up again and again. By the following Tuesday, the calls had spread outward the way these things do. My son called, confused more than upset, which is his nature. A cousin I hadn't spoken to since Christmas. An old family friend who just wanted to check in, which meant someone had been on the phone about me. Every message wore the same coat. Think about the grandkids. Don't let pride get in the way of something this small. This isn't like you, Ron. Is this really worth it over a cottage? My son came by on Wednesday, straight from the GO train, still in his work clothes. He stood in my kitchen and looked at me with his mother's expression. The one that means he's trying to find the thing underneath the thing. What happened? Help me understand. So I told him. Not the book club patio, not yet. I started with the February deposits, the 14 contracts with my name on them, the legal pad. I watched his face while I talked. He didn't defend his wife. He also didn't sit with me against her. He just had his hands flat on the table, jaw set, and I recognized the look. It was the same one he'd worn at his mother's service. Not ready to feel it yet. I didn't know you were covering the whole thing, he finally said. I know you didn't, I said. Nobody ever asked. He was quiet. She told me you wanted to, that it was your way of being part of things. Early on that was true, I said. It stopped being true. I kept going anyway. That part is on me too. He left without us arriving anywhere, but without an argument either, and with my son, that means something. Let me step outside the story for just a minute, because I want to talk to you directly. If you've ever been the one who quietly kept something going, a family tradition, a gathering, a trip, while someone else accepted the compliments, I think you probably already know the feeling I'm describing. Not rage. Something quieter. The slow understanding that what you thought was love was also, somewhere along the way, becoming a transaction with only one party paying. Tell me in the comments if you've been there, where you finally drew your line, or whether you're still looking for it. I read them. I genuinely do. And I'll tell you what happened when that long weekend finally arrived. The part that I didn't see coming, right after this. Hit like, subscribe so you don't miss the rest. For 4 days after my son's visit, I nearly undid everything. I want you to know that. The guilt has a particular shape when it involves grandchildren. Mine were 3 and 6 at the time, and they'd been talking about the cottage since Easter. That's not an easy thing to hold out against. My brother called from Sudbury on the Thursday evening. He didn't open with a question. He just said, "Don't." Don't what? Whatever you're turning over right now. The thing that puts you back where you were. Don't do it. I almost laughed. He knows me the way only someone can know you when they've watched you for 57 years. She's been telling people you're having some kind of episode, my brother said. His voice was flat and dry as the Canadian Shield. Very sad. Everyone very worried. I just want you to know what's circulating. Is that right? That's the story. Very sympathetic. A pause. You hold your line. I've watched you write that check in February for 14 years, and I held my tongue because it wasn't my place. But you called this right. Don't fold now. I asked him about the grandkids. That was the part I couldn't get past. Their parents handle that, he said. Not you. Not anymore. He drove down from Sudbury for the long weekend. We spent it at a friend's property near Barrie. A small place, a fire pit, a boat that takes 4 tries to start. We sat by the fire on the Saturday evening and watched the sun go down over somebody else's field, and nobody needed a single thing from me. But that same Saturday morning, my daughter-in-law had called Muskoka Lakeview Rentals. My son told me what happened when I saw him the following Tuesday. I'll tell it the way he told it. She'd called the agency Friday afternoon, the day before the weekend, certain it would take 5 minutes to sort out. She'd already told the kids they were going to the lake. Bags were in the front hall. Wendy had answered. My daughter-in-law had given her name, my son's name, their address, and asked to confirm the reservation for the Victoria Day long weekend at the Lake Muskoka property. Wendy had searched the system. I'm not seeing a reservation under that name, she'd said. My daughter-in-law had said there must be a mistake. Could she check under the cottage address? Maybe the booking was under her father-in-law's name and just needed to be transferred over. Wendy had checked. There's no current reservation for that property this weekend, she'd said. The previous account holder released his booking in April. My son said his wife had gone very still. He had an account with us for 14 years, Wendy had said, and my son told me she'd kept her voice even and careful, the way people do when they're not taking sides, but the facts are doing it without them. Every spring, same property, same weekend, always under the same name. My daughter-in-law had asked Wendy to repeat it. Wendy had. My son said she'd stood in the kitchen with the phone, and then she'd asked Wendy to confirm the name on the original account. Just to make certain. Wendy had told her. Ronald Henderson. Every spring going back to 2010. She didn't say anything for a while, my son told me. She just stood there. Then she looked at me and said, "He paid for all of it, didn't he?" He shook his head slowly. It wasn't a question. They'd taken the kids to a provincial park instead, rented a campsite. He said the kids didn't care where the water was. He said it went fine. He said his wife hadn't said much on the drive up or on the drive home. I went to see them the following Tuesday. Not because anyone asked me to, because some things are worth saying in person, and I'd spent enough of my life saying nothing. My daughter-in-law opened the door. She looked tired in a way that wasn't about sleep. She stepped back without a word and let me in. We sat at their kitchen table, the same table where, a month before, the group chat reminders had gone out without anyone thinking about who was paying for what they were reminding everyone of. She started twice and stopped both times. Finally, she said, "I genuinely didn't think of it as your money." "I know," I said, "that was the problem. I thought you wanted to do it. I thought it was your way of being part of things." I sat with that because it wasn't entirely wrong. It had been true once, in the beginning. It was, I said, for a few years. Then it stopped being that, and I kept going anyway. I made it easy not to notice. That part is mine. She was quiet for a moment. I told people I organized it. You did organize a lot of it. That's real. You just weren't organizing the part that makes everything else run. She turned her coffee mug slowly in both hands, the way people do when they're trying to find something to do with their hands while something lands. "I owe you more than I can figure out how to put a number on," she said. "I'm not looking for a number," I told her. "What I want is simpler than that." She looked at me. "I want to come to the lake because I'm their grandfather," I said, "not because I'm the one who booked it. If I'm there, I want to be there as family, not as the account holder." She cried a little, not dramatically, just the way you cry when you've been holding something for long enough and your arms finally give out. "I don't know how to do this," she said, "honestly. I don't know how to organize a trip that I also have to pay for. It was always handled." And I felt it then. Not satisfaction, something sadder and more honest. I had done this, not the taking of credit, that was hers, but the not having to learn. I had paid for everything so completely for so long, that my own daughter-in-law had never had to think through what any of it actually cost. I'd called it keeping the family together. It had kept her helpless in a way neither of us had noticed. "You'll figure it out," I said. "It's not complicated, you just have to do it yourself." She nodded. "That's fair." First time she'd said those words to me, and meant them. My brother came down from Sudbury a few weeks later, and we sat on my back deck with coffee, watching a pair of cardinals work over the feeder my wife had hung there back in 2007. I've never taken it down. "You know what I keep thinking about," I said. "Tell me." That first spring after Joyce died, I drove up alone, sat on the dock for an hour before anyone showed up. I watched the birds. I thought if I kept the cottage going, I'd keep the family together, like the place was the thing holding us. My brother wrapped his hands around his mug. "Was it?" "No," I said. "I was, and not because of the deposit." He nodded once. "So keep showing up," he said. "Just stop paying for the dock." 400 kilometers away most of the year, and still the clearest voice I've got. This past February, my daughter-in-law sent a message to the family group chat. She'd found a property near Halliburton, different lake, different agency, smaller place, more affordable. She'd compared 3 listings, read the reviews, called the rental office herself. Asked questions about the dock, the water depth, whether the propane was included. She'd put down the deposit on her own card. "Booking sorted for May 24, she wrote. "Dad, all you need to bring is yourself." My son called me that evening. "She did the whole thing," he said. "Every call, I watched her do it." I told him I'd be there. The weekend was good. Quieter than the old ones, smaller group, a narrower dock. The water was the same color it always is up in that part of Ontario, that particular northern green that doesn't exist anywhere south of Barrie. The kids ran the length of the dock until someone's mother told them not to, and they did it again anyway. My daughter-in-law made coffee on the Saturday morning and brought a mug out to where I was sitting on the dock before anyone else was awake. We didn't say much. The lake was flat and the loons were doing what loons do at 6 in the morning, and there was nothing that needed to be said. I thought about Joyce and her spiral notebook. I thought about the man who'd kept a tradition going past the point it was actually sustaining him, because he'd spent 11 years confusing what he was paying for with what he actually belonged to. Here's what I know now that I wish I'd known at 40. Generosity and being taken for granted are not the same thing, but they can look identical from the inside for a very long time if you let them. The moment I released that rental reservation was the moment I found out what was actually keeping my family connected, and it was not the agreement I signed every February in Gravenhurst. It was never the agreement. You're allowed to show up. You're allowed to be part of things. You're allowed to contribute. You're also allowed to require that what you give is recognized as a gift and not assumed as a service. The day I stopped paying for the dock was the day I finally got to sit on it. Pack your bag, go to the lake, but let someone else call the agency this time. You've earned that.